I'm working on this baritone guitar. This is a large body instrument, and a baritone guitar has a much longer scale length. In other words, the string length is longer on these. So I have a fingerboard made up for it. Here's the neck. It doesn't look appreciably longer than a conventional guitar, but the scale length, in other words, the string length, is considerably longer. It's 27 inches long, where most guitar scales would average right around between 24.5 and 25.5 inches would be an average. Well, I have to cut the fret slots in this fingerboard, and I have to know where each one of those goes, of course. Finding out where they go is not a big deal. You can look that up online, and here I've just made a list of each fret position that has to be cut on the fingerboard, and they're listed here in inches and then thousandths of an inch. And they need to be cut very accurately. I can't afford to have any variation, because then the guitar won't play in tune correctly. So today I'm going to make one of these. This is called a fretting template. This is a commercially made one that I bought years ago, and it's for a more conventional style of guitar. This one is for a 24.5 or thereabouts scale, and a little over 25. So what they have in them is these fretting templates have these little notches in them, and each one of those notches corresponds to a fret position. And by setting this up on my table saw with a very, very narrow, fine blade, I rigged this up with another jig, and by sliding this across the saw with the fingerboard double face taped into it, I could cut each one of those fret slots very accurately and very reliably, and of course it's repeatable. But I don't have a 27-inch template, so today I'm going to make one. I made this piece of polycarbonate, 1/4 inch thick, the width and length that I want it, and I screwed it down to a piece of plywood so that I can raise it up off the mill table a little bit. And I've used these clamps to clamp it down to the mill table so that it cannot move. And it took a little time to adjust it so that this edge is always parallel to this little cutter in here. I don't want this thing set up so that on one end the cutter is going to cut in deeper than it does on the other. So that took a little time, but we're ready to go. The piece of material is very securely bolted down here. So now we're just going to go over to the digital readout, and we're going to start the process. Each time we make a cut, I'm going to make a cut with this little 1/8 inch end mill here. We're going to move into the material a certain distance and stop. And as crude as it may look, my stop is that little block right there. When the mill table moves in and touches that, it's going to stop in the same place every time. So very simple, very direct. I've adjusted my workpiece to a 0 position that I marked on it, and we're ready to begin the process. So now we're just going to go to the digital readout and turn that on. Oh, it must like me. It says welcome. So now that I'm in the 0 position that I've assigned to the piece of work, what I can do now is I'm in incremental, so I'm going to hit X0 because I'm working on the X-axis, and so now I'm at 0 inches. From here, all I have to do now is follow my list of measurements here, and that will tell me where to make each cut. My first cut is going to be at 1 515 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to travel to 1 515 thousandths. Takes a little time, got to hand crank this. And getting there. And there we are. This will require some judicious cleanup, but there we have it, a fretting template for a 27-inch scale guitar. I've double face taped the fingerboard blank to the fretting template, and I've done that in such a way that the center line of the fingerboard and the exact center line of the template coincide with one another, and my 0 points, my 0 points coincide as well. So with this held in place, now the template can be applied to the cutting jig, and I can cut my fret slots. My fret cutting jig is just this slider that fits on the table saw. It's really nothing more than a glorified cross-cutting sled or miter gauge, whichever you prefer to call it. And of course it's organized so that it runs perfectly at 90 degrees to the blade. And you can see as I move it, it passes over that blade, which this is a very, very narrow blade. This only cuts a kerf of about 22 thousandths of an inch wide. So it's a specialized blade. Way too stupid expensive for what it actually is, but what are you gonna do? So this includes, if we can get in on this here and focus on it, it has this pin that you can see right here. And that pin is a registration pin that will correspond to each one of these openings in the fretting template. So as I slide a pin, whoops, let's turn this the right way. As I slide a pin and a slot together, now that's going to cause the saw to cut that particular fret. And I can repeat that for each fret down the line. And it's nicely automated, you might say. It's beautifully accurate, and of course it's repeatable if I want to do more of these.